Hey, thanks for watching. How are you doing? I'm doing great. Oh, what's that? You want to know how to say how are you in Korean? That's easy. Let me explain. Just 1 second. I ran away just because it's so hard to explain. And jokes aside, this was actually one of the most difficult situations for me to figure out how to handle when I was learning English while living in Korea. Even after studying English for many years, the first time I made international friends and started hanging out with them, the amount of how are yous that I was getting from everybody was quite frankly overwhelming at first. I remember thinking, how do I answer this? And also thinking, I just saw this person yesterday. Why do they ask me how I am today? Once again, I don't think about how I am divided by days. And yes, in Korean, you have 안녕하세요, which means hello, and its original meaning was, are you well or are you at peace? But now it's just used as a greeting, and you never expect any kind of answer to that other than an echo of another 안녕하세요, because it's again, not really a question. So when you are used to asking other people, hey, how are you? How is it going? You're right in English, or ça va? Comment ça va in French, or ¿Cómo estás in Spanish? And then you learn Korean on top of that, you might wonder, how do I say this in Korean? Because that's what you do when you greet people, right? And one common kind of translation you get is 잘 지내세요 or 잘 지냈어요 in the past tense, or even more politely, 잘 지내셨어요. These phrases mean, are you doing well? Or how have you been? Or have you been well? But you only sound natural saying these when it's at least been a few months since you last saw this other person. Another translation for how are you that you might come up with is 오늘 어때요? Quite literally translated, right? 오늘 어때요? I've actually had tons of Korean learners ask me this exact question in person, and this one only works when someone has been sick or not feeling well lately, or has been in the hospital and you're asking, feeling any better today? Out of a concern or worry. So those are reasons that you can't use those common translations for how are you. Then what can you say? The answer is quite simple. You just say 안녕하세요, which means hello, and then nothing can directly replace how are you. So right after saying 안녕하세요, you must try hard to immediately stop your English speaking brain from starting the next line with a how are you kind of message. And I personally think this at least partially contributes to the lack or absence of small talk in Korean culture. In English, for example, the exchange goes like this, Hi, how are you? I am good. Thanks. You? I'm good too. Even in this simplest form, you say at least 11 words. But in Korean, 안녕하세요, 안녕하세요, 2 words, although those are 5-syllable words. Anyway, 2 words. There's no real question and there's no real answer. In English, since you just talked about how you are, how you're feeling that day, you can introduce other topics more easily, especially if your answer to how are you was not, I am doing great. Okay? So what's the takeaway here? Remember that the question, how are you, doesn't really translate well into the Korean language unless you are asking somebody who has been sick or injured recently. You also can't use the phrase 잘 지내세요, although it's commonly taught and heard in some places, to somebody unless it's been a few months since you last saw this person. So don't even try to think of something to say along the lines of how are you to keep things simple and easy and safe, okay? Instead, people ask other kinds of questions like 식사하셨어요? Did you eat? Once again, 식사하셨어요? 밥 먹었어? In casual language. Or 어디 가세요? Oh, you going somewhere? They're not really interested in knowing where you're really going, okay? So I often see, or as a child, I often saw this kind of thing happening all the time. Like another mom says to another mom, 어디 가세요? And then this person answers, okay, I'm going to the bank and then to the market and then I'm going to come back home, feed my kid, etc. In detail, maybe because they wanted to share more information. And then the other person who originally asked that question goes like, oh, okay, bye. Why did you ask that question in the first place? People are not really interested in knowing where you're going, but they do say, 어디 가세요? These are just greetings, okay? Or people might talk about the weather or some other new fashion items they notice on you and stuff like that, but that's the same in other languages. The big difference here is that the general lack of asking, how are you? In the Korean language is very, very evident. And I wonder what you think about this. Have you had experiences where you try to say a translated version of how are you to a Korean speaker? And what do you normally say to initiate your small talk with somebody who speaks Korean? Let me know in the comments here on YouTube or in our new community on our website. It's a really fun place where you can interact with us, the Talk to Me in Korean team, and fellow Korean learners. You can take all of our courses there by starting your free trial right now. Well then, I will see you at talktomekorean.com. 감사합니다. Bye!